tangents on the verge of drastic ways. Can't escape this place, I deny your face. Sweat gets in my eyes, I think I'm slowly dying. Put me in a homeless cellar, put me in a hole for a shelter. Someone hear me please, all I see is hate. I can hardly breathe and I can only take it. It's on my face, overbearing, I can't get out. It's on my face, overbearing, I can't. Lost, mad at my own cause, fearing laughter scoffed, learning from the rush, detached from such and such. Weak, all around me weak, listening incomplete. I am not a dog, but I'm the one we're talking. I am in a buried candle.
Cool, so let's go ahead and step through the track a little bit and I'll show you how I made it. I'll show you how I arrived at some of the tones that I have configured here. Then we'll kind of go from there. One thing that I will say right out front is I'm aware of, what exact, mostly what gear was used during the original recording of this album. I know from Mix Camp, I think he was mainly using like Ibanez's during that time and looking at like EMG 8185, kind of combos that are pretty, standard fare around that time. Also using Riviera KR7s, I think, for his amps and Carbon 412 cabs, which, I mean, like, those unique sounds? I don't think so. I think those are fairly common. I don't think that's that difficult to be able to nail with other amps if you really kind of tried, or at least get in the close ballpark. As well as Jim. So what was Jim using during this time? I think he was mainly using a Dietzel and Wagner amplifier with what kind of guitar? So I can't remember. Jackson's, I think, at that time. If memory serves, I believe it was Jackson's. So again, like those aren't necessarily, something that's so boutique that it's difficult to kind of nail. But anyways, what I was trying to do more here was instead of just going and chasing those exact captures that someone has or something like that and then dialing it into spec, I kind of wanted to make this using a just common off the shelf guitar plugin, right? So I'm a NeuralDSP nut. I like a lot of their stuff. So I ended up using Nolly X and I wanted to see how close I could get in the ballpark. I'm getting something that sounded like that, if not maybe a little bit more modern, to be able to nest in there and make this video. And I think it came out, in my opinion, okay. At any rate, yeah, so I could have gone and really, dove in hard on this and made this entire series be just about nailing that exact tone with the exact specs. And maybe one day I'll go back and do that too. Like, that's cool. But I wanted to use something that was a little bit more off the shelf, like I said, so that way you can get there as well and be able to get a tone kind of similar to this, again, if you like it. One other thing that I will give a quick call out to is I do play the bass slightly different in this song than what Paul usually did. I kind of like to lead a little bit more with the guitar tone in a couple of the sections. So I just feel like it adds a little bit more emphasis to those parts. So before I get blasted in the comments, I know I added a little bit to it. I took a little bit of creative liberties. It's my cover. I can do what I want to, but hopefully you do like it though. At any rate, let's go ahead and take a look at the track. Then I'll show you some of the configurations we're kind of stepping through as well. So here we go. All right, so let's take a look at some of the plugin settings. As I mentioned earlier, for the guitar, I used NeuralDSP's Archetype Nolly X, as well as my Darkglass Infinity Combo 500-210 cabinet to be able to do the bass side, and I'll go through that configuration in the Darkglass suite as well. And I will be sharing these presets too, so I'll make sure that these are shared out so you can get the same thing if you would like to be able to try to recreate some of this. Really, this tone I think really does work for most of the self-titled album. Obviously, you're going to have to kind of like salt and pepper in some guitar effects to go along with it. I need a little bit of flanger in this case, so I just use the Logic Pro flanger that just comes with it naturally and just added just a little bit into the mix there. There's all kinds of ways you can achieve that. I'm going to go through some of that in a future video. I really do want to get into being able to show you how to sidechain VST effect pedals into your already virtualized guitar rigs, because I think that's really important. A lot of folks, especially getting into this, don't really know exactly how that works. So I'm going to get into that too and be able to show you that at some point. But just know that the flanger comes from Logic Pro and my DAW, not from the actual plugin itself. So you won't have a little bit of that walking kind of effect that you get with the flanger. But at any rate, let's go ahead and take a look, and we'll start off with the Darkglass suite first for the bass. I'm just going to pull that up and kind of show you what I got going on here. Okay, so my signal chain basically just has my input going into the amp itself. I do not use a noise gate. Oh, by the way, my guitar. So I'm using a Dingwall Nolly NG3 for my bass guitar. So it has a Darkglass preamp already in it that I have mostly dialed to everything at noon for the most part. Maybe a little bit more of the bottom end is turned up just to give it a little bit more of that distortion on the lower tone. But yeah, I'm using a Dingwall NG3 there into the Darkglass cabinet. And then my signal chain is basically going from input through, noise gates disabled. My octaver is on with a little bit of a blend, no filter. So I have just a little bit of that octaver happening to thicken the tone slightly. I also then have a compressor turned on. About noon, you can see maybe it's about half past basically on noon on the dial there. I'm using the Alpha Omega because, of course, so the Alpha Omega Run, it's a really, really solid pedal. I love this just in general with Darkglass. Obviously, they're pretty well known for this, but this is my general configuration for that. I can get you specifics if you want, but like I said, I'll share the preset out to the cloud too. I then have a compressor going. Compressor's basically just scooped mids, and then I make up a little bit on my preamp. Again, this is going to be all suited with what sounds right to you. So if you get in the right ballpark with this configuration through a Darkglass plugin, especially if you're using any of the other tones with that, and I might even eventually try to make this in the NeuralDSP one, but I just wanted to have it in the room. I love being able to feel the bass a little bit more when I'm playing it. So I'll get you the configuration maybe in a later video in a Darkglass plugin from Neural as well. But yeah, I use scoop mids here, and then I put a little bit back with my preamp because I just like the way that sounds. So my point of kind of deviating from that was, if you don't have a bass that has a Darkglass preamp, you're going to probably have a little bit of things that you're going to add to this barometric EQ to be able to get you where you want it to be. Okay. And everything else is basically pretty standard fare. I don't have any other major configuration. Everything's by default. I am using the Nolly Nolly Mega Meld IR in here too. So no configuration changes, nothing any different with the microphones or anything like that. That's just the standard configuration. Let's go ahead and now move into guitar. So I'm going to open up Archetype Nolly here. This is my first tone. Okay. And this is basically Jim's tone is what I'm kind of putting in this part. So in this configuration, I have the compressor enabled. I have it set to being snappy. Everything else is at noon. So the compressor and the leveling is both just at noon. I have two different overdrives running here, green and red. Okay. So the first one with green, I don't really have much drive at all. Maybe like 5%, not that much. The sine is on the up version, not the bottom flat, but it's the curved response. Okay, level's about 60% on the as well as tone is mostly all the way up. So I'd say this is about 85-90%. This was kind of important. It really did shape that sound a little bit for where I wanted it to get to. It cut through the mix a little bit more. So I do like where that went. No delay. I don't have delay or reverb on both pre or post signal chain from the amp. In the plugins, we're not using any reverb or delay here, so I wanted to really make sure that those tones are kind of dry, right? Because in most of the album, they're pretty dry. They cut through kind of fast, and they have really aggressive noise gating, or potentially just slicing the noise out and in post, right, to be able to make some of that happen. But in my case, I kind of left my noise gate a little bit more open to catch some of the tones, so it could do the feedbacking occasionally. But I didn't want reverb or delay or anything else that would add anything else flubby to that mix. I want it to be very tight. So let's see, overdrive 2, we're at maybe about 20% gain. Levels at noon, so it's just the default. Bass, I have it about 35% or so, and trebles probably about 65%. Again, this was a nice kind of just way to be able to give a little bit of differentiation in the sound between the rhythm and the lead guitar, basically, in this track. One other note that I do have, and I'll get to in a second to be able to actually show you the configuration, but in this case, I do have panning happening too. So on this VST, okay, it's panned all the way to the right. So when you're listening to the track, what you hear on the right side is coming from this configuration. What you'll hear on the left side is the other configuration of amp, basically from Mick, that I'll show you a little bit later on, okay? So let's move on to the amp now. Amp configuration, I'm just going to let you kind of just see this and kind of move on from there. I know this is an important bit, but I'm not going to go through every single decision here. It was just, they sounded similar, right? So I dialed in the relative tone that I liked for the entire song. And then I gave some flavor to cut through when I needed to on the lead side. So in this case, it's a little bit more cut, right? To be able to make those things happen than the other one is. So you'll see that I'm in this kind of mode here. Configuration of the miking, I'll just leave this open for a moment so you can take a quick look. Nothing too custom really, it's just it's pretty standard fare for what you would expect to be able to see. Something like this, I have a Dyne 57 running on this side, and room send's about -6 dB. Let's see, let's go into the EQ. So EQing, I did quite a bit of playing around here. So I am using Nolly's mod for the EQ, which is kind of an interesting kind of way to be able to do it. I like the way it sounds. It adds just a little bit tighter bottom, I think, in the toning, which we're not, crazy dropped tuning compared to today's standards in this, but it is drop B, and it's still, needed to be tightened up a little bit more. So that helps to be able to get that tightness that I'd like to be able to do. And then obviously with some of the EQing here, you can pause, take a look at it as you wish. I did a little bit of a high pass filter here to make it a little easier too. And this EQ configuration, by the way, is basically the same thing on the other VST too. So you don't have to worry about like having too much deviation there. I didn't dive quite that deep with it. I left them kind of closer to one another. Just so you know, the secondary VST you're going to look at, I just cloned off of this tone and then modified it a little bit more to cut, and I used a doubler too. So like I mentioned, I don't have delay, I don't have reverb engaged here. So let's go ahead and again, just take a quick listen to what this sounds like with this particular VST running. Okay. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and move on to the second VST. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close this and open this guy. Great. All right, so compressor, same configuration as you saw before. Snappy is being used. I have both comp and level at noon. Again, overdrive 1. I don't really have much gain going on, maybe 10% upper side, so we have that scoop instead of the flat response. Tone all the way up. Level over to about 60, so this did boost slightly. I wanted to give that little bit of a boost in this side. Overdrive 2. Let's take a look at overdrive 2. So I have gain at about 20%. I have bass at about 35. Levels at noon. As a default, treble, same as before, about 60% here on overdrive 2. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our configuration. Again, you can take a look at what you'd like to see here. I did enable the doubler with about a 6 millisecond delay here, so that gives it that stereo kind of effect of a pan, even without having stereo cabs. To want to make that happen, I am using the noise gate at 60 here in this one. Going over, we have Dyne 57 again, same configuration as the other VST. I slightly boosted the mids in this EQ, but not too much. Like it's pretty much the same thing. Nolly's mod, as I mentioned before, all the same thing. And again, showing you no delay, no reverb. Let's go ahead and take a quick listen to this VST panned in. Obviously, you can hear that little bit of flanger easier on that version of the the plugin. But yeah, so that's my bass configuration. That's my guitar configurations as well. I do have a couple of sections where I kind of chopped and just basically duplicated with some double tracking the bends and such. And I gave a slight filter on those. I don't really need to go into that much detail with it. Just a compressor to be able to kind of make it sound a little bit more squashed and thin, you know, because that's kind of what I was looking for to be able to give that effect. But I'll play this part again quickly just to be able to show you kind of what those look like if you'd like to see them. I was using the Xbox Pro, both the actual just Pro Suite, which has all of their plugins put together, as well as just the compressor for this part to be able to make that happen. So let me go ahead and play that part.
As I think I'm slowly dying, put me in a homeless asylum, put me in a hole for a shelter. Someone help me please, all I see is hate.
Yeah, so just giving that speakerphone vibe, that's exactly what I chose. It just scoops a big old section of EQ out. That's essentially what I was going for the compressor there. The other compressor is running on this part of the track. In this section for filtering, basically off of the VST1, which is the VST I just showed you. So the secondary one that I was showing is the lead. Yep, so that's the configuration. There's not much more happening here. I did slight mastering with Optimus, nothing too wild. Really, I just balanced out the inputs so we could get some of the clipping under control and boost the bass in just a little bit more, because again, like playing the bass and actually having that part there, I wanted to have that be a little bit more forward into the mix versus where it was in the original. So we just did some very light kind of curvature tuning on the low end side. But yeah, that's really about it for this this track. If you got questions about anything that I've done on this this configuration, please feel free to ask. I'll give you as much detail as I can. I plan to do a few more off of both this album and some of the other earlier Slipknot albums, and hopefully to start really getting into some more of the deep dives on building tones and being able to make this stuff happen. So if you guys like that kind of content, let me know. Tell me in the comments section so I know what to make next and be able to do this. I really just love this album. I've grown up with Slipknot. I was introduced to them in 1999. Same concert that I went to for the first time at my first date with my wife now. So it was definitely a really cool thing at Ozfest. I absolutely love this band. They've been a spectacle ever since. You know, I know there's been a lot of ups and downs with the way personnel changes have happened and kind of where that's at, but I still love Slipknot. I always have. This album really holds a special place in my heart. And these guys are really, really solid musicians too. And it is a challenge, truly. It's a challenge still to this day to kind of be able to play some of this stuff. Is it the hardest thing ever? No, maybe not, but man, does it sound good. And it's just a wall of sound every time with them in the best of ways. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you'd like to do any other specifics, and I'll do my best to be able to do it as long as I like the music. See you in the next one.